Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi there, my name is Adianto Edonugraha, and on this occasion I'm going to discuss about argument analysis. But before I further explain about the materials, I would like to introduce the member first. So, first there is Adianto Edonugraha, and then Paradina Fadila, and then Pipit Novianti, and the last is Shadila Hasrah Azahra. Okay then, let's jump up to the materials. Okay, first we have to know about what is an argument. So here there are several definitions. There are three definitions here about argument. But let's just take the main point for each definitions. So first from Bowley 2011, argument refers to issues as an author's claim, which is consists of analysis and evaluation of both theory and evidence. And the second definition is that argument is supported by reasons, evidence, and examples. And the last is from Khan 2021. Argument is not a pure opinion, but it has to be supported by data, fact, and observable reality. So everyone, from those definitions, we can conclude and simply say that an argument is a statement that it has to be supported by evidence such as data, examples, quotations, or etc. Moreover, everyone, in academic writing, an argument is a formal way to make points, and when we are reading, we need to identify the arguments so we can properly understand the main points the author is making. Okay, to be more complete, arguments should have these three parts. First, we have to include our statement or our claims to the problem, and then we have to further explain about the claims or the statement that we have made. And then finally, we have to support our statement, our opinion, our explanation by evidence such as example, data, or quotations, and of course, from reliable and reputable sources. Okay, let's just take an example here. So the first sentence here, reflective writing can help students become better thinkers. So this is the topic sentence and states the claims or the main argument for the paragraph. And the next sentence here, it gives more explanation to the claim. And the last sentence here, it provides evidence by citing research study. Okay, next, so how should we analyze an argument? So first we have to briefly take a note the main assertions or what does the writer want you to do or believe. And then underline the most important reason and ask questions like is it convincing or how does it compare with other reasons? And the third is make a note of first reason that the author makes to support his or her conclusions. And finally, write down every other reasons. Okay, next, so what is the main purpose of an argument? So there are two purposes. The first one is to change people's point of view and accept a new one. And then the second is to persuade people to a particular actions or new behavior. And next we will talk about pros or conclusions. So like it was said before that the goal of argument writing is to pursue or to change the reader's point of view to a new one. In that case, the writer has to see the problems from different perspectives by including conclusions, counter-arguments, and refutations. For the first one is pros or conclusions is simply about acknowledging, recognizing the opposing point of view. Okay, next, so why is conclusion important? So the first one, it allows you to show that you see and appreciate good reasoning on the part of oppositions. And the second is, you recognize how the other side is valid, but then you prove the superiority of your positions. And the third, the opposition might be right, but you are more right. And the fourth, remember that a conclusion is not a weakness. Okay, next here are some expressions to begin conclusions. So we can use expressions such as it is true that, certainly, admittedly, of course, obviously, sure, and some people say. So by knowing these expressions, we can easily identify whether the text is conclusions or not. And next, here's the example of conclusions. So we can easily uh, identify that because there is an expression some people say and it has to be attached with the cons or the contradictions. Okay, here's the second example, and we can easily know and identify which sentence is this conclusions by knowing the expression here. It is true that students should not have headphones on when their teacher are giving a lesson. Students should not be allowed to block out their teachers, and it should be attached with the contradictions arguments. Okay, next we will discuss about cons argument or counter arguments. So we have to know first about the definitions. So it is your response to the conclusions or the opposite point of view. And this is the punchback that your thesis is right and their conclusion is wrong. And naturally, what you don't want to do is present in counter arguments. A strong argument essay should also consist counter arguments. It will show the readers that you have carefully researched and considered both sides of your topic. Okay, here's some expression that we can use to begin counter arguments. So we can use expressions such as some people believe that, critics argue that, on the other hand, though it is true, however, many believe that, it has been argued that, an opponent argues that it. Okay, here's the format of counter arguments. First, there is topic sentence. Here you should introduce the opposing side's arguments and acknowledging the other point of view. And the second, we should include the expert source that support the counter-arguments by backing up the sentence with quotations, paraphrase, or evidence from the expert. And the third is explanation sentence. We can begin with therefore, thus, as a result, to explain, etc. And nor provides the example of what is saying. And the fourth is conclusion sentence by acknowledging the other side validity in respectful way. And the last is refutation sentence, where you refute or challenge the opposition's point of view and remind readers of your stance. Okay, next, how to make or write the counter arguments. So first, you need to find the topic that you are interested in, but also something that you are necessarily emotionally, politically, or personally tied to. Second, use only database and looking up both sides of the issues. And third, identify the opposing viewpoint. And fourth, summarize their stance in your own words. 5. Concede and seek respond. Give the arguments and its strengths and refute your opponent's arguments by explaining how your point works better, logically sound, and makes more sense. Okay, next, here's an example of counter arguments in the text. So there is some expression is that we can easily identify. First, there is critic argue that, and then argue that, and then in other words, for this reason, opponents argue that, and finally, though it is true that. So, by knowing the expression, we can easily identify whether it is counter-argument or not. Okay, next, identifying refute. Okay, now we have to know about the definitions. So, we have to take the point here that refutation is when a speaker or writer encounters contradiction point of view, and sometimes it can be described as negotiation of an argument, opinion, testimony, doctrine, or theory. Okay, next, we have to know the differences between counterarguments or cons and refutations, because it seems that these two are the same because they explain about contradictions. But there are some differences. So Counterarguments or cons is usually show the opposite to the point of view or to the thesis by providing evidence and informations. On the other hand, refutations show the opposite to the opposing arguments or to the counter-arguments. Or in other words, we can say that it shows that the argument is not strong enough, therefore, we need to provide more evidence and more information to make it stronger. For the example, we have a thesis here. So the thesis is like artificial sweeteners must be banned because artificial sweeteners can cause cancer and then the human body does not easily process the artificial sweeteners and because they are healthy and natural alternatives. Therefore, it is imperative that people should boycott companies that persist in producing, marketing, and selling artificial sweeteners. Now we have the thesis, now we have to respond to the thesis. So here are the responses. So there are pros, cons, and refute. For the first one, in the pro side, saccharin cause bladder cancer in lab animals. For cons, artificial sweeteners help in weight loss. But in the refute, it against the counter-arguments by stated some researchers have conducted studies where artificial sweeteners have actually caused weight gain. So it against the counterarguments by showing the weaknesses of counterarguments. And the next one, the human body does not easily process artificial sweeteners. And the four cons, some artificial sweeteners are regulated by Food and Drug Administrations. And for the refute, it against the counterargument or show the opposite of counterarguments by stated just because a product is regulated by Food and Drug Administrations does not mean that the product is safe for human consumption because it can cause high blood pressure and consists of dangerous chemicals. Okay, next is types of reputations. There are three types of reputations. First is reputation through evidence, second is reputation through logic, and the last is reputation through exposing the discrepancies of opposing arguments. Okay, first is reputations through evidence. So we can refute a contradiction arguments or a counter arguments by providing more evidence. So we can against or against the counter arguments or by presenting more recent and credible evidence. Okay, second is reputation through logic. Where reputation through logic is quite tricky because it involves disconstructing the opposing arguments and then presenting it in such a way as to highlight the discrepancies present within the argument and it have to be checked before publishing. So it is quite hard and difficult to do it. Okay, the last is refutation through exposing discrepancies. So through this type, we can refute the contradicting arguments or the counter-arguments by showing the lack of ingredients, lack of components, or the lack of important part in the arguments. Okay, next, the functions of refutations. So the tool of refutation has a crucial significance in writing. It is important in determining whether the speaker or the writer has successfully persuaded his readers or not. And mostly the device of reputations is employed when one is dealing with a controversial topic. It allows the reader to prefer one argument over another. And finally, the use of the device is frequently witnesses in intricate arguments. Okay, that's all that we can explain about argument analysis. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.